Welcome to Tombstone Tuesdays. This is the show about historic cemeteries and the people who love exploring them. And boy, do I ever have a great guest for us today. I'm very excited to have Icy Sedgwick join us. So, before I get to that, however, I have a couple little things to do. For one thing, I want to see who is here so far. I realize here oh, hey, we've got Eric Zen Urbex. Howdy! Thanks for coming. Welcome to Tombstone Tuesdays. You know, I've only been doing this a few weeks, and I'm used to, oh, Tim Morris too. We'll say hello to you too. Howdy, howdy. Thanks for coming. You know, I'm so new to this type of format where it's live and it can be interactive. I've done a lot of podcasts, but I didn't really realize, it didn't dawn on me until I was on Sandra Pink's live stream last week that, oh, I can actually acknowledge you guys. I can mix and mingle a little. I don't have to be, pretend that I can't see you or anything. So I'm also going to ask a couple questions here. During the show, if you have any questions, if you could just do something like, put like QQQ or something, or just write question so that I'll see it. I'll do my best to see it, but and if I don't, I guess you can just repeat it if I miss you. But how's everyone doing, by the way? Oh, hey, Jan's here. Jan, how are you doing, Jan? It's nice to see you. I recognize you. How cool is this? So people are here. This is awesome and wonderful. So, what was I going to say now? I'm just looking at everybody's comments. That is awesome. So, like I said, if you have questions as we go along, just write question, and I will scroll through at some point and gather them up, and we'll ask Icy about them. Of course, as always, I have to mention this week's sponsor. I'll bring him on here. And this week's sponsor, very special indeed. We have Elgin Watches. Yes, indeed. I love this ad. I found it in some newspapers in the late, I think, 1897 newspapers, because I was researching the good old airship mystery. And I love that they have, who better to sell a watch than Father Time? And in case you're wondering, sometimes people say, how do you tell Father Time from the Grim Reaper? Since, after all, both of these guys are carrying a scythe around with them. Well, you want, big hint, Father Time is a lot better fed. I mean, he has skin over his bones. The Grim Reaper, pretty much bones, and he looks grim. You get the point. Of course, the real supporters here are my Patreon supporters, and I want to give a shout out to Anne, Bob and Connie. I'm surprised they're not here. Envy, Jay, Julie, Margaret, Hugh, Mikhail, Naomi, Angelica, Scott, Ghost Cat, Ian, Jessica, Peter, Sarah, Rachel, and of course the other Tui, who is not related to me at all, and I just love that we have the same name because it's a weird name. So you guys, and as I like to mention, when you follow me or on Patreon, you can kind of keep up with me there. And if you support at a certain level, I send out a custom postcard made from photos that I took, usually in a cemetery somewhere. So that's one of the benefits you get when you support me. And gosh, I sure appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. All right. Now, I have a couple other announcements before we really get into the meat of the show. I'm doing something a little weird. I mean, weirder than usual this Thursday. I'm going to have like a little show and tell, a story time. I'm going to tell you the story behind that very Valentine. I got that when I was 8 years old, and it's like many years ago. And that is one of, it's a very precious, one of the most precious things to me, because it made all the difference when I was 8 years old. Very important. I've got a story to tell behind it. And I might start doing some show and tells on Thursdays and like bringing other people on to tell their show and tell, just for the fun of it. This Friday, I'm going to be on Paranormal Gateway Paratalk podcast. And that will be at 8 p.m. Texas time. Oh, hey, there's Sandra Pink. I see her. She just... Woohoo! Sandra, I was just talking about you. Were your ears burning? Thanks to you, I'm going to pay a lot more attention to what people are saying. I'm going to try anyway during this chat. At least I'm going to mix and mingle at the beginning and the end. So thanks so much for coming. Oh, and we have Rhiannon's here. Oops, if I can get you. People are just popping in, guys. Thanks so much. Woohoo! Oh, and now the cat. Sorry. I've been trying to get her settled, and she's like jumping on things. Well, hey, everyone wants to get in on this fun. So I'm going to do our cemetery photo of the week, and these come from Don Bloomer. Let me bring them up for you and then tell you the story behind them. Get a better look at them if I click on that. So Don, this is what he said. A year or so ago, I emailed you this question. Unfortunately, I did not receive an answer. I feel so embarrassed. I'm so sorry. I'm really trying to get better. Mondays are my answer, reader, and newsletter emails now, just so you know. So here we go. I'm trying to atone. Oh my gosh, there's the cat. Don't knock that off. We shall see. This could end poorly. So he sent me some lovely photos, and he said, I visited a local graveyard last week, and I saw the subject of the question again. A couple of years ago, I was in Scotland. Lucky duck, I'm dying to go. He visited a few graveyards. Yes, as you do. I saw in most of them several columns topped with a stone carving of a vase. So here you see them, with the cloth flowing from the top over one side. Now, last week I was visiting a local cemetery, and for the first time in America, I saw the same carved top. Do you know the symbolism of these carvings? Well, yes, in fact, I do. Don's photos, they show urns, and they are actually a very common Victorian-era symbol. In Greece and Rome, soldiers were often cremated. Their ashes were put into urns, and a shroud might be placed over that urn. Now, this is where it's weird, because cremation wasn't a common thing during the Victorian era. So at first glance, it does seem a bit funny. Why would they use this symbol? Well, the Victorians borrowed a lot of symbols from ancient times, and urns are one of them. In fact, humans, it's just something we do. We borrow symbols from other cultures, and then we adapt them to their beliefs. So Christianity has done this with a lot of pagan symbols. And symbols, so it can seem strange, but that's what we do. We adapt these symbols. So symbolically, urns stand for the idea that just as we came from dust, so shall we return to dust. Now, here's something. Oh my gosh, I'm fighting with my cat. Maybe I should show you guys. I have got, she is climbing all over everything. I hope she doesn't unplug anything important today. Usually I can get her settled beforehand. But one more thing about urns. I'm going to bring it on here. There's a difference between fringed and non-fringed on the cloth. So that's something to keep your eye out for. And I didn't know this for the longest time. But the fringed, it stands for the veil between life and death. When people talk about the veil getting thin and he saw curtains, they're talking about the fringed. When there isn't a fringe on the urns, or I'm not on the urns, I'm sorry, but on the cloth, that stands for shedding your earthly garments or perhaps your death shroud. So just a slight little difference there, one of those little details. And that's one of the things I like about cemetery symbols and symbolism in general, is there's always something new to learn, always something more to it. It's never like, oh, I know it all. But I do want to say, if you'd like to learn more, of course, you can always check out my book. It's available on Amazon. It's also available at the National Museum of Funeral History now, which is exciting. So speaking of books, our book of the week just so happens to be, it is The Skeleton in the Floor. And who is this by? It's by our guest, Icy Sedgwick. And in case you're wondering, where does a neuromancer hide the bodies? How did a skeleton end up embedded in the floor of the House of the Long Dead? Well, you're just going to have to go by icysedgwick.com, where you can download this free book, which just so happens to be a prequel to a whole series. So if she wants to tell us more about that, I'm sure she will. You've got to check her out. Now, without any further ado, I'm just going to tell you her bio, and I'm going to bring in Icy. So Icy Sedgwick writes dark fantasy and gothic horror when she isn't blogging about folklore, mythology, and weird superstitions. She also runs the fabulous Folklore podcast, available on all podcast platforms. And I also just have to give her an extra special shout out for being so kind to come over here, because she's over in the UK and it is after 10 o'clock her time, and just awfully nice of her to stay up, or I don't know how late she stays up, but for her to be on at all. I'm just very happy. So let me bring her into the stream now. Woohoo! How you doing, Icy?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I don't know why I'm waving. I'm terrible on video calls.
I wave all the time. I'm a big gesturer. You know what? You can't see me. You could just be talking to me on the regular phone. I'm like waving, I'm gesturing. I mean, no one knows it. So now it seems like there's a context behind it. But let's see who else is here. I think we've got a few more people saying hi. We got Charisse is here. Yay. Oh, my synchronicity buddy, Wayside Wade is here. You're in Tombstone, Arizona, buddy. You got to check out the Boot Hill there. We were just talking about it. You can see Lester Moore's infamous epitaph. Here lies Lester Moore, 4 slugs from a 44. No less, no more. And it's true. It's true. Cassandra always said so. Wow, you guys are saying hi to each other. Okay, you guys mix and mingle. I'm going to talk to Icy now. Okay, so we're going to talk today about corpse roads, and I'm just really fascinated about those. And I guess while you talk, I did swipe a few of the photos that you had in the article about them. But first of all, what is a corpse road? What are they exactly?
They're sometimes called coffin roads as well, but basically in the UK, people weren't always buried near where they lived, because it depended where places had burial rights. So sometimes you might have someone who lived like quite far away from their village, and then they would follow this route to the nearest burial ground. And obviously this was in the years before we had like huge cemeteries, because they didn't come in until the 18th or the 19th century rather. And they're really meandering routes. So you can see in this photo, you can just about make out where the corpse road might have been. The sheep obviously aren't bothered. And it was just, the road had to be like as meandering and wandering as possible, because people believed that spirits could only really like travel in straight lines. So if you had a route that kind of went back on itself and so on, that somehow the spirit couldn't then follow you home from the churchyard, and it would stay away.
It is so weird, because we're talking about the corpse roads in the UK, and what I think is interesting when you mentioned in your article about, spirits only moving in a straight line, I was reminded that I believe that's an Asian belief as well, and I wonder, why would we be so limited in the afterlife? I mean, when I have had dreams where I could fly, I was all over the place. I wasn't, I could only go in a straight line. I just find that so interesting. And there was also, you mentioned something about when they carried the bodies on these corpse roads, they had to go feet first? And what was that all about?
Again, I think it was something along the lines of if they couldn't see, because if they were lying on their back, with their face heading towards where they were coming from, they could still see where they were leaving, if that makes sense, because they were facing the direction they were going in.
So just, I guess they can't move around a lot in theory. Yeah, it's so strange. I'll show some more of these. They're really pretty, these corpse roads, or coffin roads. So now, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Were these family members, or was this some sort of vocation to be a coffin carrier along these roads? Or did it vary, or do we know?
I think it was probably family, because, or just the community in general, because I think death in this period, kind of before the big cemeteries, was much more of a family affair. And obviously you would have a funeral party probably walking along as well. But ultimately, whoever was carrying it would be kind of whoever was able to in the family. And then you get to the point where obviously they started cutting across people's land, and landowners tried to get them moved and things. And because some of them are public rights of way now.
Oh, wow. Because it was a corpse road, it's become public right of way?
Probably. It's one of those things where, like, we've got some really archaic sort of rules and regulations in the UK, so it's kind of, if someone's like used the thing often enough, it's really difficult to get people to stop. So
oh, wow. So you can just, this is a corpse road, and it's been here since the Middle Ages, and it's just public property now in some regard. Wow. Now, were they only supposed to be, in the day when they were really being used to transport bodies, was that supposed to be their only use? Or would people just, this is a great way to get to market or whatever else?
I couldn't find anything about that in the research, but I would hazard a guess that people probably didn't use them because they weren't the quickest route from A to B.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So people would probably, you would obviously have like animals grazing on them because they're just like webs.
Yeah.
But so I think most people would probably have used them solely for corpse roads just because of the routes that they were following.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. So for some reason, I didn't think about the whole family going with them. So you might have seen just a whole group going along. Maybe that was good because they could trade off. I mean, people aren't exactly light and doesn't, and so they would be in a coffin as they were transporting them, or just in the shroud, or how did that work?
As far as I know, it was in the coffin, but there were some parishes that actually had like a communal coffin.
Oh yeah,
And I think there's a picture of one.
There.
Yeah, so they would borrow the coffin, put you in it, carry you, then just bury you in your shroud, and then put the coffin back. And I'm like, that's like sustainable living before we even had a term for it. And I think, considering obviously how much effort would go into making a coffin and all the wood and everything like that, it kind of makes sense to just recycle them in that way.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm quite fond of the communal coffin idea.
I like it too. It's less of a burden to think of that. Let one less expense time-wise to make one, or if you were purchasing them in some manner. And yeah, it is one more tied to your community in a way. Everyone goes to the cemetery or the graveyard in the same vehicle, essentially. So yeah, I think those are interesting. Another thing I thought was kind of a cool thing were coffin rests, because some of them you would walk right by. I think like this one, if I walked right by that, I had no idea what its function was. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, it was because, as you've said, coffins would get heavy after a while, and you couldn't put them down on the ground. And this is another one of those peculiar beliefs that people thought that if you did, the spirit could just wander off. And I'm like, they're not toddlers; they're spirits.
Yeah.
So then they came up with this quite genius solution to the problem of the coffin rest. So you would just put the coffin on the stone, and then it wasn't on the ground, so the spirit couldn't go and do whatever it wanted to do.
Of course, I guess, but then they're buried. That keeps them? I don't know. Yeah, I know. It's really, those beliefs. I mean, I know they made sense in their era, but sometimes it's hard to wrap your head around them. So yeah, that one I just love, because I can imagine hiking there and having no idea. This one, here's another one. It's a little more obvious structure. Yeah.
Sometimes they kind of almost look a bit like they could have potentially been used for other things, like mountain blocks and things like that. So you do kind of think, is that an instance of us adding a meaning to something, or was it just a multi-purpose item?
Well, and it would make sense for it to be a multi-purpose item, wouldn't it? I mean, they were just as practical, if not more, than we are today. Probably, as long as there wasn't too much of a stigma around, like, oh no, you don't want to set your sandwich down on the coffin rest because you'll get a spirit in your sandwich, I mean, you never know, there could be some things like that. But if they were just like, yeah, it's where you had, maybe they did. I mean, there's so many things, I guess, that get lost to time.
Yeah, and I think people have got a tendency of over-interpreting things sometimes as well. So.
Yeah, over-interpreting. Now, there was a reason, though, that they would sometimes go through streams, right? Here, I'm trying to find one that looks very, I mean, you said they meander all over to keep the spirits from, since they can only go forward, and they would also go like through rivers and streams as well. Why was that?
This is an interesting belief because it crops up in lots of other different types of folklore, and it was just the idea that the dead couldn't cross running water. So you could carry them across, but the spirit couldn't then cross over itself. And you get this in vampire lore, the idea that like Dracula can't cross running water and so on. So the idea behind it was you would carry the coffin across the stream, and then if the spirit did decide to go home, it would kind of get stuck at the stream.
Wow. It seems like, and there are, in my historic research, I come across a lot of haunted bridges. I wonder if there's anything related, because, crossing the river, for some reason, I'm like, why are bridges always haunted? So that's interesting. Okay, so that was a way to sort of keep these spirits in check. Boy, a lot of the folklore about it really seems like they're trying to, hey, we're taking you to the cemetery and you're going to stay here, buddy. We don't want you back.
Which is weird because there's not actually that many stories of haunted graveyards, and you'd think, well, if you're taking the spirit there, where do they go?
Yeah, if they're stuck there and there's no other place for them, it seems like they would just be having a big old party all the time there and just mob you. I don't know. Oh my goodness. So we asked that already. I wanted to ask, I wanted to know about, well, I was very curious because I heard the phrase, and it sounds very strange to me, about what is a corpse candle. I mean, yeah, what is that?
They've got lots of different names, and the easiest way I can think of describing them is if anyone's seen, I think it's the Two Towers from the Lord of the Rings series, and it's when Gollum's leading them across the marsh, and there's all these like lights out on the water, and Gollum says, "Don't follow the lights." That's kind of what they are. They're just basically marsh gas that's ignited. And they were called corpse lights, they were called corpse candles, lots of different things. And people sort of believed that, and again, they're in Dracula as well, they believed that they would lead people sort of to their doom. I have come across another theory for them as well, that they were actually the spirit, because obviously your body would be laid out and prepared and be ready for burial, but then like the night before, the spirit would actually trace the route to the cemetery itself and then come back like it was having a dry run.
Oh wow!
How it did this, if it could only do straight lines and not costumes and things, I don't know. And that's another belief of what the corpse light was. It was actually the corpse tracing its way to the cemetery and back again.
Wow!
I prefer the idea that it's the marsh gas one, because that one's got more folklore behind it, I think.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, that is interesting. I wonder if the same people were thinking that the spirits could move in a straight line, but then thinking that they could somehow have a very wiggly try run. Yeah, I can see where those two things don't quite jibe. Although, you know, maybe when it's with the body, no, I can't even. Now, one of the things, I think you mentioned it in your article that really caught my imagination has to do with bioluminescent owls.
Yeah, I can't remember where I found this, which is really annoying because it really captured my attention. But it was the idea that certain animals kind of give off like a certain kind of glow-in-the-dark quality. And there was this belief that perhaps barn owls were one such creature, and that what people were seeing was not these corpse lights, it was actually just glow-in-the-dark owls. And I'm like, that is a TV series waiting to happen.
I know, it's crazy. Yeah. I actually found this on a website called Owl Pages, where they're actually just primarily talking about owls. But there are people who have looked into particularly barn owls seem to be bioluminescent in some manner. I don't know. They're very white. I could see it under the moonlight, maybe like me glowing, but I don't know.
I mean, they're beautiful birds if you see them in flight, and if you hear their screech, it's like a really, really specific sound. They're really noisy.
Yeah.
But still, you're like, they do travel in straight lines. So, you know.
Yeah, I wonder. Now we're connecting some dots here for the people of the Middle Ages. Oh, let's see here. A few more people saying hello to us. We've got Charisse saying so cool. Yeah, isn't this cool? Kenneth saying hello from Colorado. Hi, Kenneth. And here is someone saying,
oh, hi, someone from Rural Gothic.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see. So tell us about this, about the function, about the drovers' routes and the function of the...
I've never heard that one before, but I can believe that, though, that if you've got... people obviously trying to drive cattle to market and so on, you know, wanting to kind of keep the two things separate.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's kind of a bit more of a practical reason for them. Plus, I suppose it would also mean that you wouldn't have funerals and sort of cattle movement and so on. Because I mean, if you've ever come across sheep blocking a road before,
oh yeah,
yeah, you I can see why they'd want to keep them separate. So again, it could be one of those things that there's a perfectly practical reason for the thing. And then people have added folklore like, oh, people believe that they had to be meandering and so on after the fact. And it's sometimes quite difficult to tease those two things apart.
Yeah, that's true. Because it sometimes the superstitions just really do serve a practical purpose, don't they? You know, one thing that I'm very curious about is, well, you know, if you'll pardon the pun, I guess. I mean, how long were these around? I mean, when did they die out? Corpse roads, they're, you know, so to speak.
I couldn't find a specific date because obviously it varies by area. But I think once you start having people moving towards cities and so on, like during the Industrial Revolution, you then start having like the inner city churchyards then start getting used instead. So I would hazard a guess and say that really it would be the combination of people moving and living in different places. And I did read somewhere where there was, and I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but there was somebody who was trying to get them off the coffin roads onto actual roads. So by that point, you've got actual passable routes for people to use, which would be a bit more direct. So you'd be looking at sometime in probably like the 18th or 19th century by that point.
So am I wrong in picturing this in my head that they were supposed to, just humans physically carry the coffin like pallbearers this whole way? I mean, some of them were like 15 miles or something, right? I mean, they weren't always just a mile, which would still be a long way. But I
think that's why they would have groups of people carrying them. And I don't know obviously how many people watching will have seen Poldark on the BBC with Aidan Turner in it. But there's which series is it? There's an episode in one of the series where he's actually using it, probably not necessarily a corpse road per se, but he's carrying the coffin of his daughter to the churchyard, and he's just got it on his shoulder. It's a really striking image. And it was quite nice to sort of see the BBC give that nod to this practice that used to happen.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I can imagine some people were a bit happy when they were able to switch to hearses and things because, you know, I can imagine it, you know, carrying, like it seems I think it's really a cool practice, actually. You're out in nature, you're carrying this body to the cemetery. I think it has sort of a romantic appeal to me. The reality of it, I'm sure, would be very challenging, but I would love to walk one of these, and I'm just curious, how do people find them if they want to go on one? And are they, I mean, how can you walk on them?
Some of them, I dare say, you probably can. Some of them, I can't remember the names of them because it's a while since I've looked at this, but there's certain like things you can look out for on like ordnance survey maps and so on. And there's sometimes they are actually marked with names like Church Way and stuff like that.
It's a big clue, huh?
Yeah, and sometimes it's just literally a question of going, well, here's a settlement, here's where the nearest church would be. How would they have got between them?
Yeah. Oh, that is interesting. No, I think I try to get over to England once a year. My stepdaughter lives there, and of course I wasn't able to this year, shocker. But next time I go, I'm like thinking, wow, I would really love to find one of these corpse roads that's accessible legally and physically and check it out. It does seem really neat. And I like that. Makes sense, looking for things like Church Way. I mean, here in Texas, you know, a lot of our roads, they're FM and then a number, and it stands for farm to market, and it all makes sense. You know, you look at it like, oh, that's how they would have taken things to market. But the whole Church Way, that's a good clue. I'm going to have to hit up Google Earth or hit up Google and just see if I can go to some of these. So where was I? I had a question in there and rambled off. What were some of the superstitions around? I'm sure people thought these roads were haunted, but what are some more of the superstitions involved with the whole carrying of the body and these corpse roads?
I think a lot of the superstitions are things like, you know, you have to carry the body feet first, like we said. And it basically seemed to just simply follow the actual taking of them. So I think it's things like, Oh, I was going to say, obviously, it's a confusing one, this, because some cemetery superstitions say that it's good luck for the corpse to be rained on,
Yeah.
but then it's bad luck if it rains at a funeral. So I don't know if this actually dates to that period.
Oh, okay.
It might have, oh, what is it? Something you're happy the corpse, the rain falls on or something. I can't remember the exact term, but
and isn't there something about like thunder? Is that either good or bad? I remember if there's an open grave, it's bad, but then if there's thunder, it's good. I mean, it's very conflicting when it comes to rain and cemetery superstitions. I can't keep it straight.
I think one of the ones for me is it's bad luck if a grave is left open overnight. Now I want to know, is that a grave that actually has a body in it, in which case it would be bad luck because of body snatchers? Or is it a grave that hasn't got a coffin in it yet? Because if you've dug a grave and not put anything in it yet, that implies that you know there's going to be people who need to be buried. So I was wondering if that actually dated to like periods of epidemic and stuff where there was a lot of people dying. And it could also just be because otherwise people might fall in.
Well, which makes sense. Of course, you always hear the one about don't walk across the grave. After it's been buried and everything's been said and done, they still say don't walk across someone's grave. And I did talk to a headstone, monument builder guy who told me that, yeah, he had been in a big hurry. He was checking out a cemetery and he ran across it. It actually caved in under him when he was going across, and he was there alone, and there was quicksand involved. Of course, this is Texas, and luckily someone came along and rescued him. He said this is before cell phones. So yeah, I mean, I always keep his cautionary tale in mind when I'm running around cemeteries, because I do get excited, and occasionally I do walk across those old graves. I know I shouldn't. So yeah,
well, I think it's just because somebody said this is obviously the more expensive graves, because obviously once the wood rots, there's then a void, so you could kind of end up with like a little mini sinkhole, whereas if somebody was just buried in a shroud, you don't have that problem as much.
Once again, that community coffin, the parish coffin, is a good idea.
Yeah, better for health and safety.
Indeed. I feel like I should be showing some more of these glorious looking corpse roads. I'm not sure which ones I've done, but I think they're so pretty. Now
it's just quite nice to see the English countryside as well, really, because it's just covered in snow at the moment.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Oh, where are you? Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Newcastle, so I'm like literally just down the road from Hadrian's Wall.
Oh, neat. I went there once.
And it's just cool because there's just bits of the wall lying around everywhere. And yes, we've had like the worst snow. Like everyone else is having like really proper wintry snow, and we get the occasional shower.
So your snow's all wet. I mean, can you make like a snowman with it, or is it too icy?
Probably a small one, like one about that big.
Yeah. I know we don't get a lot of snow here in Texas. I grew up in Washington State, and we had so much snow that I could actually ski to school and things like that. Yeah, it was really fun. But down here, oh my gosh, we've only had one or two substantial snows, and the thing I like most about it is that it brings out their inner little kid, and even adults are out there making snowman. And my favorite was I saw a snowman mariachi band. Like they had like 5 snowmen, sombreros and all this stuff. I'm like, wow, they go all out. Up north they're just a little bit like, snow, but so it's nice. There's a mixture of fun with it. All right, so I am just curious. I mean, everybody, by the way, Icy has a fabulous podcast. Well, it's called Fabulous Folklore. That must be why the word fabulous came to mind. And you really must check it out. It's just, you will love it. If you're enjoying this show at all, you're really going to need to, here, I'm going to hit this little banner, follow Icy Sedgwick online. You got to go to her website. You post them on YouTube as well. And I know a lot of the people here today are on YouTube. So after the show, don't forget us now, but you need to go make sure you subscribe to her channel. And I'm just curious I learn so much every time I read one of your blog posts or I listen to your podcasts. I just wondered, where did your passion for folklore come from? How did you get so into this?
It's a funny story because back when I was about 10, and I'm considerably more than that now, we were at one of the many castles that litter Northumberland, the county where I live, and there was a little pamphlet, just like A5, sort of stapled together, so about maybe that, So I realised that obviously we have different paper sizes.
Oh yeah, 8.5 by 11. Everyone, 8, 5, 7. Anyway, translate.
And it was like ghost stories and legends of Northumbria.
Oh yeah.
And then every time we went to a different place, I would get another one. So I've amassed quite a collection of like ghost stories of different parts of the UK and so on.
Oh, that is so cool.
And I didn't think a lot of it. I thought it was just cool. And then it must have been about 5 years. Yeah, 5 years ago, I noticed this hashtag on Twitter. So I'd always been interested in folklore. Used to like just read it just for fun and things.
Yeah.
There's a fabulous book, The Lore of the Land, which is just this like massive, like huge doorstop of a book that's like a directory of folklore of different parts of the UK.
Really?
It's really good, by Jacqueline Simpson and Jennifer Woodward.
I'll have to put that on my wish list.
It's really good, and I, obviously because I write fantasy and gothic horror, I was collecting them for like inspiration and stuff. And then I saw Folklore Thursday, and it was where people just tweeted folklore on a Thursday with the hashtag.
I love Folklore Thursday. I just have to interject. Like when I'm sick of everything else, I've had too much news, I need a break, I go to Twitter, I just scroll Folklore Thursday. Doesn't matter what day of the week, people. It's a great hashtag.
It's so much fun, and it's a nice community. And I mean, there are other ones like Mythology Monday and Superstitions Saturday and stuff as well.
I had no idea.
But that was the primary one. And then I thought, oh well, I'll blog about some of the folk stories I know.
Yeah.
Newcastle Vampire Rabbit was my very first one.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, it just kind of went from there. So then obviously the more I was writing the articles and the more people were then commenting and liking them and so on. And then I started writing them actually for the Folklore Thursday website. It just became like a thing that I did. And then I started the podcast by accident because that's the kind of thing that I do.
Yeah, I know how that goes. Yeah.
Seemed like a good idea at the time. And then yeah, it just sort of kind of built from there. And I think, you find what kind of folklore you're most interested in. Like for me, obviously it's like the death stuff.
Oh yeah.
And like there's other bits of mythology in that I could take it or leave it, but that was kind of became my thing. So
I've been enjoying your series about the astrological signs and all that. But here's something I want to ask you about, but I don't know how to really pronounce the word. It's one of those, maybe people can relate. You see this word and you just sort of glaze over it, but you recognize it. Okay, it is, I'm going to mangle because I can't remember how it is. It's like apotropaic. It's the witch signs, the apotropaic. That's it, apotropaic. Okay, yes. Tell us about those. I should have gotten some pictures of those for this. But anyway, yeah. Tell us about Oh, dang it! I'll get it. Apotropaic signs.
I only know how to say it, and it took me about a week to learn how to say it because I kept getting it the wrong way around.
I feel better. You know what? I've actually been about to give a talk and then suddenly realized, I think I'd never said this next word out loud. Oh, it's really embarrassing. So yes, apotropaic.
This is the thing, sometimes if you've only ever seen a word written down, I kind of feel like you can't really have a go at the person because it's like, well, at least the read.
Exactly. I try to at least it's noble that I read it. But yeah, I know I mangled a few words in there.
But yeah, it's basically, it just means protection, or actually the original Greek word meant just to turn away. And it's a branch of folklore where it's quite contested because some people say it's actually really mundane and all these practices have been given this ritualistic background that they don't actually deserve. But then other people say, oh no, it's protective. And it just comes down to things like people might carve like a cross, like the saltire cross, into things to kind of deter evil. Or they might put like a conjoined V, so it looks a bit like a W. And these marks have been found on barns, have been found in churches.
In America, we have a lot, I think, in Amish country. We have a lot of, if any, just for the Americans here, they might have seen them. Hex symbols, I think, would be considered along these lines, right? Or is that a different thing?
The daisy wheel where it's like petal, because a couple of people...
we get those on headstones, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there's one guy, Obadiah Wheeler. I did a show about him because my friend discovered she was a descendant of his. And one thing that made his headstones kind of unique is that he often has a hexafoil, a daisy on it. And I thought that was interesting because I was like, isn't that one of those apotropaic signs? Isn't that one of those? And so, yeah, I'm glad to ask you a little on that.
Well, it's weird because like some people think that because you find them on barn doors a lot in the UK, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, you get them in Pennsylvania a lot."
Yeah.
And some people think they're just like apprentices practicing with compasses, which would make sense. That's far less exciting. But
yeah, come on now, we want the sexy answer.
Yeah, and then you have the buried stuff. So this is things like people have found like horse skulls buried under the floor, mummified cats buried in the wall, and it's like there's no real mundane reason why you would mummify a cat.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're in Egypt.
It's weird.
Yeah, so where are they finding these mummified cats?
In wall cavities, under floors.
I see. Like in an old house. Like they're just remodeling maybe, and they, wow, what's this? And because a mummified cat.
Quite a lot of them have been thrown out over the years, obviously, but occasionally, like a builder will come across them, or a homeowner will find them and be like, "Oh wow, I know what this is," because people are a bit more aware about them now.
Yeah.
Someone actually had a witch bottle and they took it on the Antiques Roadshow, which is like the program where people like turn up and obviously, I want me thing valued. That was quite funny because they didn't realise it had urine in it.
Ew.
It was horrible.
Oh my gosh, that can't have aged well. Yeah. Yikes.
But yeah, so it's just basically people putting everyday objects, like clothes were another popular one, into the wall, in spaces beside chimneys and so on. And again, people will say, "Oh, it's ordinary, normal stuff. There's a perfectly logical explanation for it." Other people say, "No, it was a protective thing to turn away witches." We'll never really know.
Yeah. No, but there are some interesting ones. Sure, I had no idea about the whole mummified cats things.
They're sometimes posed so it looks like they're chasing dead rats that are also mummified with them.
Wow, I mean, that's kind of clever. It's eerie as well. Let me just scroll back and see here. Oh, someone has a comment. Wayside Wade, he says, the video game Final Fantasy X had something similar to the marsh gas. They call them fireflies.
I like that.
Oh, that's a nice little punny thing because we have fireflies here in Texas, which are pretty cool. How neat is that? And we also have someone saying hello to us, Paranormal Paratalk. All right. Now, if anyone has questions for Icy, go ahead and I will scroll through and make sure that we get them incorporated in. I know we veered off of the Corpse Road thing a bit, but that's fine. So now you mentioned a vampire near you. Rich, what's the deal? I had to go back to that.
We do have a story of a vampire in Annick. And people will know where Annick is purely because they filmed some of the Harry Potter films there.
Oh, wow, okay.
So there was a vampire there in 1196.
Oh, wow.
And it was during a plague outbreak. So these two guys chased it to its grave. And a monk wrote all this down, so who knows?
Well, hey.
And they dug it up. And they attacked it with a spade, as you do. And I think they took the heart out and they burnt the remains. Obviously they didn't call them vampires in the 12th century. They're generally called like revenants or what's the other one I've heard? There's another one I've heard which is it just sounds cooler. But no,
branding. It's all branding for the vampires, you know. No, but when did vampire come in now? To interrupt, like you said, so they were revenants. But when did they be? Actually, I didn't realize this. When did vampire kind of take off? Ish.
I mean, in a literary sense, it would have been about 1820 when John Polidori wrote The Vampire, which
Oh,
is
okay.
like the one that came out of the same meeting that gave us Frankenstein, and it's
Yeah.
terrible.
Oh,
It's
isn't that a
really,
bummer
really
when you read
boring.
something like that and you're like looking for it and you're like, this really sucks. Oh well.
But then, of course, you get the likes of Dracula and so on, really kind
Yeah.
of popularizes it. So it's a relatively, to us anyway, it's obviously far more popular and got a really long lineage in Eastern Europe, but in the UK, it's a bit more of a new term. But no, the vampire rabbit, I'm laughing
Vampire
because
rabbit.
it's just such a daft thing. On the back of one of the buildings that faces our cathedral, one of our cathedrals, because we've got two.
Oh, you said rabbit. I thought you said Robert at first.
No, rabbit.
Oh my goodness, this is even better. Now I'm thinking of Monty Python, of course, but
Well, this is the thing. Like, I hadn't seen Monty Python.
oh,
And
I
people
see.
always mention Binocular as well as the other one.
Yeah.
And he's basically above this doorway at the back of this building is this carved, I think he's made out of plaster, rabbit. And somebody at some point in the past, because he's got fangs, not like rabbit teeth, he's got like fangs for some reason. And
Wow.
they've
I
painted
mean,
them with a bit of red. And he's got like red claws, and then he's black, and he's just amazing. Every time like somebody comes to Newcastle, I'm like, I've got to go and show you the vampire rabbit. It's
Totally. I would totally need to see that. That just sounds like a must see.
Yeah, he's very, very cool. I've got him on my blog actually because he's just so.
Okay,
He used
everybody.
to be white at one point, and then they repainted him.
I'm going to be checking out that vampire rabbit for sure. Wow. So what can we look forward to from you on your podcasts and your blog? I mean, what things are you researching now? I guess I got to ask. What are you sunk your teeth into recently?
The blog post I literally finished actually with my new podcast episode that I recorded this morning.
Oh my.
Was it's actually on sort of like love divination and love charms and
timely.
love magic and things. And that's going to go out on Saturday. And then after that, I'm going to be looking at sort of apotropaic stuff, but for people rather than buildings.
Yeah. Oh, here we had, speaking of apotropaic, which I'm still stumbling over, this person says I live in, Wayside Wade gets all over the place because he's in Tombstone, Arizona. Now he lives in Amish country in Wisconsin. I have not seen an Amish cemetery yet. I have not either. That is something I should see. My grandparents lived in Amish country, so we would see Amish people, occasionally, and we would see barns and things like that. And I would always look out for the hex signs on the barns and all that. But anyway, so what else do we have here? All right, so I'm curious about some more cemetery folklore or tales that you might be willing to share.
My favourite one, and because I think, I take photos, does this count? Is that if you take rubbings of epitaphs, you know how people used to use scratch rubbing? Apparently it means you lose your memory. And I'm like, oops.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's the worrying one.
So if you do the rubbing, you're supposed to then lose your memory, huh? Oh my goodness. What if you could just rub the rubbing onto something else and get your memory? I don't know.
I'm trying to think of some of the other ones because there's some really weird ones. There's the
another
fact
one.
that you it was supposed to be bad luck to be the first person to leave the cemetery after a funeral.
So how do you work that out? They're a big club around the door where they're all just, why don't you go?
Well, I think a lot of people probably took a servant with them and sent them.
Oh, yeah.
And things like that. So then, and then there was all these kind of things like if the first person to leave the cemetery was a man would die next, and vice versa.
Oh, wow.
And then, of course, there's the fact that it was considered bad luck to be the first person buried in the cemetery. Now, I would reckon it's bad luck to be buried.
Yes, good point. Very accurate, I would say.
But so what they sometimes do in some cemeteries is they would bury like a local beggar or a dog, or I'm presuming they would let them die first, and they would bury them in the cemetery. I would hope
so. Yeah.
And then that would sort of solve that problem. And then once the first person had been buried, they could just continue using the cemetery.
Kind of got to break the ice, so to speak, and then it's not bad luck. Wow. Yeah. Now, do you live near a cemetery? Are there any near you, or?
There's not any immediately near. Like, obviously, distance is all relative. Like what I think is
Yeah.
quite far in the UK, it would be like just down the road in America. So,
Especially in Texas, people drive everywhere. Their idea of it does change your idea of space, it seems. Yeah.
but I mean, there's one that's about a 12-minute train ride from me, which is beautiful. It's called the Highgate of the North. It is so pretty.
Oh, really? Oh, nice.
And that one's got that one's got Tolkien's aunt buried in it.
Oh, wow.
And her husband, so goes the story, was a mines inspector. So he used to entertain the young Tolkien with tales of how awful it was underground in the mines, which then went on to apparently, so the story goes, inspire the Mines of Moria.
Oh, I love that. That is really interesting. Oh, wow. Well, now I want to make sure to remind people, because time does fly. So I want to say that if you have questions for Icy, make sure you ask them, because I'm going to be asking her to, to just tell us where we can find her and all that good stuff. And before we know it's going to be the top of the hour. Also, really quickly, I want to remind you to come back on Thursday. I'm having a show and tell story time that night to tell you the meaning of that particular Valentine that I got when I was 8 years old, and it made all the difference in the world. And I will be on Friday. I'll be on Scott's show. It's a mouthful, Paranormal Gateway Paratalk podcast, which is 8 p.m. Central. And I also need to tell everyone that next week's guest is going to be Robert Wright from Sidestep Adventures. I know many of you probably follow him. He does a lot of exploring here in the Deep South. I think he's located in Georgia, and he does a lot of course, he goes to a lot of cemeteries, which are fabulous places to go. But I want to know, just make sure you ask some questions before we run out of time, because I want Icy to tell us more about what she's got going on and where we can find her online before we have to go. So there, I had to interject all that.
I think the only other thing I'm working on at the moment is my PhD, so I'm looking at haunted house films.
Oh, is that all?
So.
What is it, horror
I love
films?
the way I'm just like really offhand, like, yeah, that's the only thing I'm doing at the moment.
Well, it's probably helps you keep your sanity. So what is it you're doing your PhD on?
I'm basically looking at how films use like set design and cinematography to actually show a haunting. So I'm looking at films like the Conjuring and stuff.
On your Twitter bio, I think a while ago. Doesn't it say something like that? And I didn't know if you're being cheeky or if you really were getting
like, that's literally what I'm doing.
Oh man, you just get cooler by the second. I gotta tell you that. Okay, tell us more. I didn't mean to interrupt. Okay, everybody, did you guys hear that? She's getting her PhD in. It probably has a much better title than I'm saying, but studying horror films, you guys, and tell us more about it. Okay, now I'll shut up and listen.
My favourite thing is whenever I tell people I'm doing a PhD in haunted house films, they go, "Can you do that?" And I'm like, "Well, I hope so. Otherwise, I've just wasted the last however many years of my life."
Yeah, here's my dissertation. Oh, sorry, I see you can't do it. All right, 8 years later, thank you.
But yeah, so I'm really interested in like the actual technical side of filmmaking, which I won't bore everyone with. But I also really love haunted house films, because obviously anything ghosty and supernatural, I'm there like a shop. So I'm looking at like how set design and cinematography and sound is used to make it feel like a haunted house.
Like I remember, The Exorcist. I remember hearing, I don't know if this is true, but you might have heard this, that they took the sound, when people hear the sound of bees buzzing, we feel afraid. And so apparently they recorded the sound of bees buzzing and embedded it in certain points in the soundtrack to help make the movie scary. That might be one reason that people find that movie scary. I don't know. Have you heard of that?
I haven't come across that, but I wouldn't be at all surprised. You do get things like that where they'll sort of put like it's almost like you get whispering on soundtracks quite a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Almost
which is creepy.
Is it oral?
Subliminal.
You can't quite hear it. It's a bit like infrasound, really, that like it's there and it affects you, but you can't really get a hold on what it is. But so it's been quite interesting. It does mean that I'll be like, oh, I've got to do some PhD work. I've got to go and watch a film then.
Yeah, that's the thing to do. I love it. Oh, that's awesome. So what are tell us some of your favorite ghost movies and why? Like, which ones do you like? Are there some that you find more truthful, or there's some you just like because they're fun, or what?
I've got a really low bar because I've seen some really terrible films, and I can watch a film and be like, that was awful, but my God, the cinematography was gorgeous. So I've got a bit of a funny thing
I do
in
that
terms
with
of
films. I'll watch them just for the atmosphere. Oh, I love the chair. I'm like, the whole plot sucks, but sometimes I watch it for different reasons.
yeah, and it's like if you get something out of it, great. But I think the one film, it's not a haunting in a traditional sense. But the film I make, like literally everyone that I know watch is Session 9.
Session 9. Okay, we all have our homework now. I've never seen it. Session 9, huh?
It's on Netflix in the UK. I'm not sure if it'll be on the US one or not.
Oh, well, I have streaming and disc, so I'll look both places.
It'll be somewhere.
It'll be somewhere, yes.
Got Josh Lucas is in it, and David Caruso's in it.
Oh.
Which is a bit
Isn't
of a
this
weird
that guy who
combination.
takes his glasses off and goes, looks like we have? Oh, he says some punny thing.
He doesn't do that at any point in the film.
Oh, thanks, because I'll be waiting for that. Like, when's he going to be funny? Oh, okay, thanks. Okay, he's just
But what's
plays
really
it
cool though, when you mentioned your next guest who does Abandoned Places, it was filmed in the Danvers State Asylum before it was turned into luxury apartments.
Ooh. Oh, wow. That place has to be haunted, don't you think?
Oh, they had some really weird experiences when they were making it as well, because I watched the making of on the DVD and I was like,
neat.
oh man.
Wow. Oh, that's
It's really creepy though.
Oh, well, creepy. Okay, I will have to watch that with the lights on. Let's see. Oops. Oh, here's someone. Icy, what is the most frightening thing you've seen in a cemetery?
I've never really seen anything frightening in a cemetery, unless I did have a fright in the Paris catacombs.
Ooh.
Which is kind of a cemetery.
Yeah.
But it was from the living. And it was, you know how the catacombs are just these huge, like, network of tunnels?
Yeah.
And
which seems a little
periodically
claustrophobic, I think.
You'll be walking along and there's like a gap with a gate through to one of these tunnels.
I've never been in one. I've only seen photos and freaked out enough over those.
But there was a guy sitting on a chair in front of one, but he was behind something, so I couldn't see him. And I just like walked past on my own, like just blithely, like enjoying the catacombs. And he kind of went like, bonjour, from behind this pile of bones. And I was just like, like, and he thought it was hilarious. He thought it was funny, but I was just like,
yeah. You're like, I just peed myself, dude. Yeah. Oh my God, that is funny. Well, here's like, yeah, I have not been there yet. It's on my, hopefully
just do it. It's amazing.
I would love to. Well, one of these days. This one person, Phantasm, was quite interesting with the production. Is that a film you're familiar with? Phantasm.
I haven't seen that one. I'll have to check it out though.
Yeah. Well, Gina, you've seen one. She hasn't. So she got a recommendation. We all have to see Session 9. Has anyone seen that? Oh, let's see. Oh, they charge you on Prime. Well, I'm kind of a cheapskate. I usually try and find a way to stream it, but we'll see. I do need to see it. Mark B said that is scary. It reminds me
I do recommend as well if anyone goes to Edinburgh. Which is
I want to.
Like almost my second home. If you do the tour with City of the Dead tours, because they take you into the Greyfriars Kirkyard and they take you into the Poltergeist location.
Ooh, wow, yeah, that does
I'm saying it like that because it's not actually the right tomb. Really interesting though.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And now, have you been to Pere LaChaise? Oh,
spent 4 hours in there.
Oh, I'm so jealous. It's like, I've tried. I haven't been able to yet. So
yeah, I went celebrity spot and it was really weird.
Oh, you mean living or dead celebrities?
Oh, dead ones.
Oh, okay, just making sure.
Yeah, like Oscar Wilde and like Jim Morrison are the
obvious
ones.
Yeah, definitely. I know now. I wonder if post-COVID, if people are going to be kissing tombs as much as they used to, because isn't it? Some of those are just covered in lipstick. Whenever I see it,
they've had to put perspex around Oscar Wilde, and that's now covered in lipstick. And
it's like trying to see through all the lipstick. Oh, that's crazy. That is so funny. Oh my goodness. Oh, hey, here's Bob and Connie. Bob or Connie. They're gonna watch it later. Hey, it's a replays. There's replays for a reason. So just come back when you can. Oh, all right. Well, now we're getting to the top of the hour. We can't keep Icy too late. She probably stays up all hours. I imagine she never sleeps. She's doing so much. She gets so much done. And then, like, you know, plus the Ph.D. is happening. You probably got to go watch a horror movie now or something.
Probably. I seem to be able to bend time, so it's fine.
That's good. I wish I could get that skill. You're very prolific. You're a lot of fun. I lost track of my questions because I was just having fun talking to you. I'd love to have you on again sometime, and you know, we could zero in on another fun aspect of cemeteries if you're ever up for it. It would be great.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And I just want to scroll through here and see if anyone else, if I've missed any questions. Maybe you could tell us once again just how people can find you and follow you as I scroll back through.
I love that, the idea of like, here's how you can follow me. It sounds weird.
It does. Stalk me.
I'm basically on like every platform is Icy Sedgwick.
That's so logical. That's good for you.
Yeah, and it's also Sedgwick with one E. People keep putting one in the middle and it hasn't got one.
Oh, they do? Oh, I'm like, I hope I didn't. Oh, yeah.
No, you spelled it properly. It was brilliant.
People always want to stick a Y in my name. They can't get over there's no Y's in my name, and so they just have to, it's you have to Sedgwick. We just get it, misspellings drill into us. But yes, no E in there. Well, one E. People, just like it says up there. What's this? Oh, yeah, cemeteries and film. Everywhere. Here's this next. Oh, someone's.
I could do that.
Let's do this. Okay, let's get her on our. Okay, I will. Everybody, wonderful suggestion, Eleanor Kershaw, and I will I will arrange that. I know she's got obviously quite the schedule. Y'all, the day before a big test or something. I'll just we'll have her on again. It's a good way to kick back. All right, everybody. Well, thanks again for being on. I see this hour just sort of flew by. I can't believe it's actually a little over an hour now. Thanks for being on the show. And like I said, we'd love to have you back to talk about cemeteries and film. And thanks everybody who came. I did my best to try and mix and mingle a little more than usual and not just ignore you guys while you're asking questions and then realize I hadn't. So I'm living and I'm learning. So yes, we'll see you all again somewhere soon. And see, I'm waving like crazy. She was talking about grass. And someone loved the show. They said you were so interesting. Isn't she amazing? You. I know. I knew you were going to be a hit. And when I told my newsletter you were coming on, several people already follow you, and they're like, "Oh, I see. Oh, good that you had her." So hooray! Oh, here we go. Thanks to you. Yes, people are saying thank you. All right, awesome. Everybody. Thanks so much, you guys. We will see you again. Cemeteries and film, you know it. And if you like the show, make sure you like and subscribe, and that helps me keep going. So thanks, everybody, and good night.